All right, well, it's 3:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to today's EOL seminar. We have 8 speakers from the COMET team who are going to launch through their slides here, so I'm going to keep this short. And I will introduce Svet Ross-Lazarov, who's an instructional designer and program manager at the COMET program. Here we go for What Can COMET Do for You?
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Before we get started, I wanted to ask you to turn on your Slido app and point it over there because we have a couple of questions we want to ask you in the course of the presentation. So it'll be great if you're ready to jump in right away. All right. Again, thank you for coming. Today, myself and several of my other colleagues will introduce you to some of the capabilities that the COMET program can offer to EOL. And we have a very simple set of objectives. Please move forward. No, there we go. We'll first share with you who we are, then we'll share with you what we do, and then we hope to engage with some discussion with you all about potentially what we could do together in the future. So these are very simple things, and in our demo part, we're going to go rapidly through many capabilities that we can offer the EOL program. And so very quickly, the COMET program sits right here underneath the UCP, the UCAR community programs. We are part of the Educational and Training Center within UCP. And COMET has been part of UCAR since 1989. And originally, we started as a professional development program for the National Weather Service. But since then, we have evolved to become something much more. We are working with partners around the globe, and we are reaching an audience of over 700,000 users with our website. So it will be wonderful if we can come up with a way to work together and give you access to that user base. All right. So our team is made up of people with multidisciplinary expertise. We have educational designers who specialize in educational psychology. We have scientists who help us infuse the latest science into all of our instructional offerings. We have project managers who keep us on task and make sure that we do things well. And then we have graphic artists that develop custom graphics for us, whether they're 2D, 3D, or mixed reality graphics. We can do all of that. And we also have multimedia and web developers who support and publish our e-learning lessons and our online platform. So our passion is to create customized learning experiences for all of our clients around the world. And we also specialize in bringing in the latest science and technology and tools directly to the operations. So we work with organizations that transfer quickly scientific research into operations. So if this is something of interest, please think about potential ways that we can assist you in that way. Also, if you're working on a grant, as you're working through that broader impact section, we can increase your reach to people around the globe. Or if you're working on a tool and you would like to train people, this is something that we do well. Or if you have a tool that you wish more people would use, more people will know about it, we can also help you with that. So I invite you, as you're looking at the various demos that we're going to show you, just think about all the possibilities that we can collaborate on together. All right, and with this, I will turn it over to Elaine.
Thanks so much, Svet. Hi there, I'm Elaine Benson. I'm the communication specialist at COMET. So just a quick show of hands. Who here knows what MetEd is? Oh, we got some hands. That's great. MetEd is actually one of our flagship capabilities here for the COMET program. And in fact, many of those who may not have heard of COMET actually know what MetEd is. So that's kind of what we're known by. For those who don't know, MetEd is an online education and training resource catalog that we host and maintain. We have almost 1,100 lessons that are all online and free, and courses and other resources across various atmospheric and geosciences topics. And we actually develop these resources with our team of educational designers and scientists in collaboration with subject matter experts across organizations such as NOAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, USGS, and so many more. And MetEd's also very well established in the geosciences community. It's been around since 2007, has at this point almost 1 million registered users. And we also have an email listserv with about 128,000 subscribers as well. So very well established. And we're also excited to announce that we will be launching the next evolution of MetEd this year on a new learning management software that's even more powerful and has even more features. And what's also really cool about this is that we can also start hosting content for other organizations and programs. So this could look as simple as maybe having some of your stuff on MetEd, like programs have already been doing, or now with this new LMS, we can even have a customized, fully branded portal for you that you can take your user base to, which is really cool. So if you're looking for a home for your education and training resources, or you want help with developing those resources in the first place, we would love to work with you. What's really great about potentially working with us with MetEd is you don't have to worry about finding a vendor, contractor, building a site, building a user base, all that, because we've already done that for you. So we would love to bring you on board. And if you're interested in any of that, please feel free to reach out to us. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Svet to talk more about our educational design approach. Thanks.
Thank you, Elaine. So in a moment, when the slide goes forward, I wanted to share with you some of the scientific underpinnings that run throughout all of the work that you will see in the rest of the presentation. And we wanted to start with a very basic definition of what is a successful learning experience. What we think of a successful learning experience is when the right people do the right thing at the right time. And so a lot of the work that we do is trying to enable people to accomplish just that. And so here is a poll question for you. Take a look at this statement about learning and let us know whether you agree with it or disagree with it. All right, we'll give you a few more seconds to send in your votes. Oh, wow, we have a bimodal distribution here. That's curious. All right. Okay, thank you so much for sharing that with you. So very quickly, would a couple of you, those of you who selected disagree, could you share with us why you think that? And one of you who agrees, could you share with us why you think that? Yes, please.
I selected agree, and I guess I simply couldn't think of a reason why that would be wrong. So I was like, agree.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being brave and sharing your explanation with everyone. Could we hear from someone who disagrees? All right, I guess people don't want to share that. Okay, all right, but you'll see why we asked that question in a moment. So educational psychologists have found out that that statement does not work well. Here are some of the things that psychologists know need to happen in order for us to learn. First, we need to pay attention. If we're not paying attention, we're not learning anything. Second, we need to understand the information or the new skill set that we're trying to learn. And if we understand it, then we need to practice it. And we need to use it in the real life situations that we're actually going to use in the real world. And we need to do that practice over time. And as we're practicing, we also need to receive some feedback about the progress that we are making. And so in a review of almost 50 years of educational psychology research, neuroscientists and psychologists made that conclusion at the very end of the slide, that sometimes the most effective learning strategies are completely counterintuitive. All right, so let's take a look. As I mentioned, we first need to attract the attentions of the learner, and our attention is directed by our motivation. Our motivation determines where our attention is focused and how much effort and how much time we're willing to give to a learning experience. And so in our work, we try to create initial motivation to attract the attention, and then we place in motivational aids inside of the learning experience so that we can maintain that motivation throughout. Here are some basic motivators. The first one is solving challenging problems. As adults, I'm sure you would understand when I say that we love solving problems, especially when they're challenging and especially when we're successful at solving them. That is a very strong motivator for us. Another one is putting the learners at risk. So when you think about this one, when are you most ready to take action? When are you most ready to learn new things? When we're sensing a little bit of danger, whether it is perceived danger or whether it's imaginary danger. Thank you so much for sharing your reasons for agreeing with that statement. That was one way in which I placed you on in a little bit of danger, right? So a little bit of risk helps people be ready to participate. All right, using real life context is very important because as adults, we're motivated by relevance. If we go to a learning event and we immediately see how we're going to use it in the real world, that is a motivational factor for us. And then finally, providing natural consequences feedback. This is when instead of telling our learners, you were correct and you were incorrect, we show them what happens as a result of their actions. And then we say, please try again, reflect on the results. Are these the results you want to achieve? And if not, try something different. All right. Now, another thing that we do in our materials is to space and vary our practice. So we offer our learners different scenarios in which they get to practice the new skills and apply the new knowledge. And we would like them to do that because we love it when they make mistakes. Because when we make mistakes, we want to know why we've made the mistake, and then we reflect on what we could do in order to do things better. And this is something that stays with us for the long term. And then finally, in our practice scenarios, we ask the learners to practice different skills at the same time. So in one lesson, our learners will interpret satellite data, then they will interpret NWP data, and then they will prepare a communication of everything that they have learned that will be sent out to the public. And so you see how we weave together different skills so that we maintain the attention of the learners throughout the learning experience. Here is a graphical representation of spaced and varied practice. On the vertical axis, we have the amount of information that we can remember from a training event. And on the horizontal axis, we have the time that has passed. So you see here at day 0, we have learned something. And then we begin forgetting it very rapidly. It's called the forgetting curve in educational psychology. We've studied it for over 200 years. Even the people who set out to disprove its existence ended up confirming it. It's that well established by now. So we need to give our learners another chance to actively retrieve those memories they created during the first learning experience. And then the forgetting curve sets in again, and we need to provide them with yet another chance to retrieve those memories, to activate those neural networks. And you see that over time, the curve starts to flatten out. And by the time we get to the 3rd and 4th retrieval event, they can remember almost as much as they could right after finishing the training. You see the massive learning that can be realized through spaced and varied practice. And then one of the other interesting things about human memory is that it is context dependent. In other words, in addition to storing the information and skills in our brains also store cues that help us retrieve that information at the right time, at the right situation. And so in all of our learning materials, we place real life contexts so that our learners will create the cues that will help them pull the information at the right time and in the right situation. This was first reported in 1975, believe it or not, and the experiment was called the diver study, where a group of divers learned new vocabulary underwater and another group learned it on land. And then they were tested how much they could remember. Turns out that those who studied underwater remembered more of that vocabulary when they were underwater And those who studied on land remembered more of it when they were back on land. So this is the power of context. It helps us to remember more. And so in the demos that follow, you're going to see how we use motivation, how we use spaced and varied practice, and how we use that context-dependent memory in order to engage our learners in meaningful, memorable, and motivational learning experiences. And with this, I think I will turn it over to Abby, who is joining us online. Abby, take it away.
Thank you, Svet. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Abby Dowd. I'm an instructional designer here at COMET. And I'm going to give you a quick overview of online lessons that COMET provides today. So as Elaine previously mentioned, MetEd is one of our flagship capabilities at COMET. And our online lesson catalog is extensive with more than 1,000 lessons and resources for people to take. So through MetEd, we're able to offer a wide range of free, self-paced, and asynchronous online opportunities that range from 10 minutes to 2 hours. These lessons are rich in multimedia, things like videos and interactive graphics, real-world case studies that cover topics such as weather and forecasting, satellite, radar, aviation, hydrology, and other geosciences. Our lessons are built using the latest research in learning science, instructional design, and other methods to create learning experiences, just as Svet was just talking about. Our learning experiences are relevant. They're focused on real-world applications so that our learners can immediately apply what they learn. They're flexible. They are available anytime, anywhere, making it easy to fit into busy schedules. And they're engaging. Our lessons feature real-world case studies, simulations, videos, visual tools, and quizzes that reinforce learning, and we'll dive a little bit further into those a little bit later in this session. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Laurel, thank you. So researchers, developers, and even administrative teams working on diverse projects across NCAR and UCAR and UCP often face various challenges of keeping up with evolving tools or methodologies and data science practices, and online lessons can really help to bridge those gaps. COMET actually recently collaborated with the USGS and the National Ocean Service to develop 2 different lessons designed to help these organizations address the knowledge gaps that they knew they had. So on the screen, you can see a couple of screenshots of the cover of the lesson, as well as a little sneak peek of one of the interactions within those lessons. So on the left, you'll see the continuous water quality troubleshooting fouling warnings lesson, which is a lesson that COMET developed in collaboration with the USGS to create an introductory lesson on fouling checks that helped bridge a knowledge gap by guiding learners and identifying the sources of fouling warnings for various water quality parameters and the processes of troubleshooting those out in the field. And then on the right-hand side, you will see the planning for coastal flooding with NOAA annual high tide flooding outlook, which is a lesson that was developed alongside the National Ocean Service to create a long-term planning scenario that would introduce the capabilities of the annual outlook dashboard, which would help learners understand how to interpret its projections and apply them in real-world situations. These are just a few lessons that demonstrate how targeted training can effectively address specific knowledge gaps within organizations. Beyond filling these gaps, they also highlight a key advantage of online learning, which is customization. Different teams can tailor their content to their specific needs, ensuring that the right people get the right information just in time, even within UCAR and NCAR itself. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you. So today I've shared a very broad overview of a couple of examples of our online catalog. And I want to encourage you to explore it even further. On the screen here, you'll see if you go to our meted.ucar.edu website and click on education and training, that will take you to our full catalog of lessons that we have, and you can explore it on your own time. Now, with that said, we'll dive a little bit more into some of the cool things that we're doing here at COMET. I'm going to turn it over to Kellyanne to talk about graphics and videos.
Thank you, Abby, and good afternoon, everyone. I am Kellyanne LeConte, and I'm a senior educational designer with the COMET program. And one of the things we get often requested is videos, of course, and these can be very flexible. You can put them on social media or you can put them on that MetEd website. This is an example here of an animation that where we're presenting what happens with that storm surge flooding and what those impacts can look like. And luckily, no people were actually harmed in the making of this animation. So it's a great way for us to really convey what's going on with these environmental phenomena. We are very interested in seeing what else we can do with those videos in order to push the boundaries, because we use AI tools to create the visuals and the audio as well. One other area that we're really trying to push the envelope is with 3D models. And here we're trying to pull the learner in to have them interact with the content. This is a terrain where we draped over it some data, and we're challenging the learner to go through 3 different locations that are on that terrain and weigh 4 different factors. Their challenge is to determine whether there's likely to be a post-wildfire flash flood and debris flow event. And so we had to work with our subject matter experts at the Weather Service to really determine what is the sort of like introductory sort of starting point with this sort of data, and then scaffold that up so that our learner could gain a little bit more skills and work their way up to the more complicated data sets. Together, those interactions as a package, we were very pleased to have in the 10th eLearning Excellence Awards in 2024, where we were a finalist. So this is an area, of course, in this example, we're showing how this works really well for things like terrain, but many different spatial concepts are really well suited to this type of 3D model. And now I'm going to bounce it over to Laurel to give you one other example of a model.
Thank you, Kellyanne. Hello, my name is Laurel Ozerski, and I'm an educational designer at COMET. And I'd like to briefly share our work about utilizing simulation-based learning. So as you heard my colleague Seth mention earlier in his introduction, research in learning science has repeatedly shown that effective learning experiences provide students with the opportunity to learn and practice in realistic contexts. However, as you can imagine, there are varying constraints that often prevent us from meaningfully learning and practicing in real contexts. So, as an example, this is an XO2 sonde. It's used by the USGS for collecting continuous water quality measurements. These sondes are in limited supply, they're not cheap, and they're not indestructible. So for these reasons, it's not very practical for new hydrologic technicians to practice with a sonde. Instead, they worked with COMET to create this 3D model. And by incorporating this model into our training, learners can examine and manipulate the sonde. They can also practice troubleshooting with it, all the things that you would do in real life, but from the comfort and safety of their office. And because we collaborate with the subject matter experts, we can generate recommendations like you see here and custom feedback that really mimics the experience of having a more senior technician in the room providing guidance. This is also true when it comes to making and addressing mistakes, which again, as Svet mentioned, we know to be another key element of effective learning. Here we can let the simulation inform the learner of their mistake and of the possible consequences they would have experienced, but it doesn't have quite the same level of stress or even discouragement that someone might experience if they made that mistake in the field. And we can simulate more than just tools and instrumentation. Here we actually, also for the USGS, we replicated their custom software called Site Visit Mobile Aquarius, which they use for recording groundwater data. And we replicated the interface in a way that is nearly indistinguishable from the real program, except that it has some key benefits. So for one, you can't accidentally delete important data in our version, but also our version utilized, again, the detailed guidance from the experts related to some of the key nuances in quality data collection and reporting. And also because we're in control of the programming, we can use the learner's actions to provide evidence of what they know and what they're still confused about. So with that information, we can provide just-in-time feedback to prompt the learners in the right direction when their actions indicate they may have some ongoing confusion. So these are just two of some fun examples of virtual simulations we've done, but we also apply simulation-based learning to our in-person trainings as well. And for more on that, I will hand it off to James.
Hey all, I'm James Russell. I'm a scientist for the COMET program. So as you heard, we have a lot of asynchronous, remote, and online lessons. And you've heard about how they integrate various successful training practices, such as the opportunity to make mistakes in low-stakes environments, or incorporating realistic context through scenario-based learning. So I'm now going to transition away from that and talk away from that online learning and talk about how we put those learning practices into action in a different environment, and that's synchronous in-person training, so courses or workshops. So we've run many in-person courses and workshops in the past. A recent example is a course we implemented and delivered for the National Hurricane Center in the past year. In that course, forecasters from weather services across the Caribbean learn about how to interpret National Hurricane Center products, produce a localized forecast, and communicate that to various audiences. So COMET was asked by NOAA to transition this course from a very lecture-focused format to an active learning experience. And so we worked with the National Hurricane Center staff to integrate poll questions, exercises, drills, and games that really put a lot of these things into practice throughout the course. So next slide. All right. And so as a part of this, we designed and implemented a full day of simulation where the learners and the trainers, which is the National Hurricane Center staff, get to sort of role play a real world forecasting scenario in the shoes of forecasters on a specific island in the Caribbean. And you can see a sort of depiction of this scenario and simulation shown on the screen here. So in this, they get the opportunity to make a forecast and localize it for their area, all during various stages of a tropical cyclone, and receive guidance from experienced National Hurricane Center forecasters in the process. And so they also get practice communicating that forecast to a COMET or National Hurricane Center staff member who's role-playing as a either local political leader or the media or the public. And so all of this builds off the rest of the course through a lot of spaced and varied practice and a lot of the interactions they're working with. And so finally, they get many opportunities to receive feedback from the experts and discuss and reflect on their actions, allowing them to understand where they can improve in the future when they're doing these things in the real world. And so this example is heavily focused on forecasting, but we can and have implemented these practices in in-person courses covering a variety of topics, whether it's hands-on work using observational equipment or helping learners to better understand a topic in the geosciences. So now I'll hand over to Adam, who I think is in person, to talk more about our synchronous, in-person, and hybrid training capabilities.
So thank you, James. My name is Adam Hirsch. I'm a scientist with COMET. So in addition to going to destinations, we can also host people here locally. And we've done that in the past. And so what you'll see on screen is actually a group of individuals from the Korea Meteorological Administration. And this is actually from a course that we actually held in person in Boulder back in November, in addition to over the past decade plus. They've come over here and we have worked with them to determine what their training is and what needs they have. What do they want to get from COMET to be able to take back home with them, whether it's satellite training, numerical weather training, or just general understanding about the weather forecast service here. That is something that we're able to do. And we work with both internally with our team, but then also externally with various people from UCAR, COMET, NCAR, and as well as administrators and university professors as well to help them provide things like that. So they actually get that in-person training and actually have that something to be able to take with them. So we also work on that international side of the house as well. But in addition to that, we can also do collaborative components with individuals at UCAR, NCAR as well. And so we'll also do in-person short workshops, training, intensive facilitation as well. And so what you'll see is a 2-day intensive training that we actually brought in town. So we have Curtis Walker from RAL, along with Sue Ellen Hupp as well in the corner, in addition to folks from the private industry as well as university instructors. So they came in to help us design what potential classroom iterations would look like working on the private sector, to give both exposure to what it's going to be like for those undergraduates, and then also emulate those real world trainings. So if there are trainings, ideas, or things like that that are relevant that you want students to learn about in the classroom, these are things that we can also have be a part of the overall grand scheme of it. In addition, we have an applied NWP workshop that we did, and this is with a longtime collaborator from the Meteorological Services of Canada. We've been working with them since 1999. They actually used to come down in person and do winter weather workshops specifically, but as things have changed as well in the grand scheme of the weather forecasting, they wanted to focus more on applying NWP numerical weather prediction skills. And so that actually transitioned to be an online course. So we did that synchronously with them via Zoom as well, that they were then able to do. And that ended up being very successful to the point where that became an asynchronous package. So we took what we did in person, transitioned that to be online, and is now required training for the entire government side of things for the Meteorological Services of Canada. So these are the things and outcomes that can exist with the overall components. In addition, it exists both in English and in French. So there is availability for those folks as well. And so with that, I will turn over to my colleague, Will. We'll talk about the international side of the house.
Hello, everyone. Many of you know me. I used to work with you guys over at EOL. I am now with the COMET team. I'm an engineer working on 3D pause. So what I have here is half of a 3D pause weather station. This is about a quarter of our current suite of instruments, but we have a few different instruments that we 3D print and build, and we teach other nations, countries, schools how to build weather stations to increase observations in data sparse regions. So not only do we provide all the tools and everything, we provide all the in-person training, we have an online training for this. But one thing I want to point out is if you guys are thinking about field projects and you want to scale your number of observations and you're limited by budget, this is a perfect opportunity to use one of our 3D pods. They cost about $500 to build in materials, and they are very quick to deploy. They are cellular-based, LoRa-based, and Wi-Fi based. So there's many options for data communication. And this is, one of the projects that we work with in the Innovative Capacity Development Program. I'm just going to put this down. It's not very heavy, but just a little bit. Anyhow, so like I said, we host workshops on this. We perform all the training, but it is also all available online. And so if you guys want to collaborate with us, you are more than welcome. And with that, I will pass it off to Svet.
Thank you, Will. So in conclusion, we wanted to show you that in the past, we had the good fortune to work with EOL in the development of the instrumentation and measurement of atmospheric parameter lesson series. We also collaborated with Millersville University on the same project. So that is one of the other things that we wanted to highlight to you, is that the vast majority of the users of our MetEd website are university students from universities and colleges around the world. When they're preparing for their assignments, when they're preparing for their exams, the COMET website is the place that they go to in order to get ready. And so we have a large student audience, and we also have a lot of collaboration with universities, both within UCAR and outside of the UCAR system. And that concludes our presentation. There we go. And so we wanted to use this time now to see if you have any questions for us about absolutely anything that you have seen. And then after that, we hope to discuss with you any possibilities for future collaboration together. Thank you. And if you follow social media, this is several of the places where you can find us.
So while they're thinking of their questions, and reminder for those of you online, the Slido box is now a tab at the top of your video. It's a lot of information you shared with us today, which is very useful. Would you guys mind sending me your slides perhaps, and I can share them with EOL?
Yes.
Thank you so much for this. This is really awesome. Exciting potential there. My question is, what is your primary funding source, and how do we work with you?
All right, we have the person in-house to handle that question. Wendy, would you like to take charge of that one?
Sure. So we're primarily funded. If you would look at our portfolio today, the majority of our funding comes from the NOAA National Weather Service. A big chunk of it comes from the International Affairs Group. And that funds a lot of the international work that we do. But many of the examples that you saw, so the KMA course, that's funded by KMA. And so our funding profile really is, we talk about our sponsors, and we also use the other word client sometimes. And so really, we're open to working, with under the guidance of UCAR, right? As a nonprofit, we're really open to working with a variety of clients. So the money we have and what we do is what the clients want. So we're not base funded is maybe another way to explain it. So we don't really choose. We often are working collaboratively with our partners to determine what kind of learning they are looking for. But we are not often like, I would really like to do a project on X, and able to do that without securing funding from an external source to fund that. So if that's leading to, well, how can we work with you then? The answer is that's where the collaboration comes in, is like, what is it that we want to do? Where can we identify funding to be able to do that? Luckily, we're internal to UCAR. So if there are things where you already have funding, or you're, working on a project, all we need is an account key. So from an internal perspective. And again, internally, our costs are basically a level of effort. It's what things cost. We don't actually put any, there's nothing that comes on top of that. So does that answer your question?
Other questions? Or exciting ideas you want to share for projects?
Thanks for the presentation. So I was having ideas, but then it kind of led me to this question, which is like, I guess, is there like a cost benefit analysis to like how many students or learners does one expect, or like how many students or learners would justify kind of developing a lesson or something versus kind of just teaching people one-on-one in like small batches, I guess. Yeah.
Sure. Does anyone want to take on that question? COMET crew? All right, I will give a quick explanation. Please feel free to jump in. So as Wendy mentioned, we strive to meet the needs of our clients. So when our clients come to us and they say, hey, we have 1,000 people that we want to train in this, then we look at, all right, what is the best way that we can scale this for 1,000 people? So it could be a mixture of hybrid and in-person, and then e-learning as well. Some of them come and say, I have a group of 10 that I want to do training for. And so then we go, all right, so the best methodology here is going to be an in-person training, especially if they're focused on communication and other aspects of the meteorological science. And so it all depends on what our clients desire. I can share with you some statistics from our website. We have lessons that have over 300,000 views at this point. And so if you think about it, it's about basic interpretation of skew-T diagrams. Students and meteorologists around the world need to know how to do that well. So that's one of our biggest usage lessons. So every year that lesson gets more and more usage. And then we also have lessons that are targeted specifically for a smaller audience. So for example, we have a lesson on cloud seeding and how cloud seeding works. And that is a very particular audience of scientists and researchers who are interested in that. And that one receives probably 1,000 views every year. So you can see the scale. So kind of depending on our client and also depending on the level of interest.
So follow-up question to Elisa's, you know, a lot of times if you're in a proposal for including something like this in broader impacts, they'll want some sort of assessment. Do you guys provide any sort of assessment beyond like the number of people that you're reaching?
An excellent question. Yes, we do. We provide for our e-learning materials in particular, we provide a pre and a post assessment so that then we can see what is the improvement that has resulted from learners working on the e-learning module that they have gone through. And so we have that data, and as Laurel and Elaine mentioned, we're moving towards a new system that would allow us to see exactly what the learners are doing inside of the lesson itself, so that then we can show our clients, hey, look, these are the most frequent mistakes that your people are making. This is the feedback that they've received, and this is how most people work through this particular problem. So we have those two ways of showing the impact.
Great.
That I can chime in here as well from the ether.
Yes, please.
If yeah, which is just to add that I'm glad you asked about that, because that is a very important part of learning, is ensuring that we can validate and verify that our learners have learned and prove that. And so I'll just add that we do have a number of the folks on our team here, including myself, have expertise. We've worked in assessment in other fields, and are quite comfortable talking the assessment portion of learning and what that looks like. So we're happy to, you know, work with you on designing assessments, help provide insights on analyzing your assessment data, and even then using that assessment data then, you know, to I guess iterate on whatever it is that we were assessing. So lots of assessment experience on this team.
And if I may interject, also, we have written enough proposals where we have shared how we go about assessing. So if you need text that you want to put in directly into that broader impact section, we can provide that for you too.
And I'm actually with the COMET program, but I wanted to have a follow-up question to EOL and ask a little bit more about the broader impact section. When you're writing a proposal or things like that, what kind of education and training efforts often goes into the broader impact section? I don't know who exactly that's directed to, but.
Does anyone want to answer that from EOL? If no one's volunteering, I will say it tends to vary depending on the projects. You know, if we're writing a proposal, it's usually in conjunction with university PIs. And so it a lot of times is somewhat driven by their interests as well. Any other questions?
So you don't always have to have COMET do all the work. So if you're the expertise, we have various projects going on where those experts are going to actually do most of the work. And we just come in and give the touch of educational design, make sure the science is followable, and work on the graphics and iteration. So if you have some research that's really exciting and that you want to make part of it, quick, simple, quick just-in-time training is something that is always possible that you can do as well as a part of it. Is a lower cost effort than a full 1 hour module or so on that you may be familiar with from COMET as well.
I was wondering, with all these lessons that you have, and you said you try to be at the forefront of the science, how do you keep all of them up to date?
An excellent question. So usually we work with our clients, and our scientists at COMET regularly make a pass through all of the information inside, and then they flag areas that need to be updated. So then we'll approach our clients and we'll say, hey, we've noticed that you have changed procedures here and here. Latest research is also saying these things. So we'd like to work with you to make that update. And so we would usually reach out to our clients. Oftentimes the clients will reach out to us and say, we have released a new model and we want our people to start using this. So let's update this section of these lessons. So you're very correct to point out that's a continuous effort on our part. We're continuously looking through the lessons and marking things that need to be improved or updated. Thank you.
And I have a follow-up. What's your, what sort of experience do you have in training people on software specifically for, say, meteorological analysis?
Can you tell me a little bit more about the meteorological analysis? We have a number of things. I just want to make sure that I answer your question.
Well, this is in general, because, we have a big software package that we have workshops and stuff like that, but then training is tricky, right? I mean,
Right.
So how would you approach that problem?
Certainly. We have a number of different strategies depending on what it is that you want your users to do with it. And so if you want them to become experts in a certain area, we will create either in-person workshops, and then we will provide them with access to the software, and they will do the tasks that you want them to do with it. And then we'll provide coaching so that if they come across a problem, someone is right there to help them move forward with it. And so in this way, we have found that learners tend to stick with the use of the software when they return back home, because they've already had some experience and they have built up a level of confidence that they can use the software on their own. We also have situations where our clients want our learners to be comfortable using the support documentation for the software. And so in that instance, in our activities, we will ask the learners to go back and forth between the support documents and the software so that they become familiar with both at the same time. So depending on what you would like your learners to do, we can custom make solutions for that particular task. I hope this has given you some ideas.
Well, how about online courses?
Oh, sure. You saw in one of the simulation examples here that we were able to replicate the entire interface of the software that the learners were supposed to use. And so then the learners went in and started using the software as they normally would, except, as Laurel pointed out, they had the added benefit when they made a mistake, that there was some feedback and guidance to help them get back on track. And so we didn't leave them to flounder around to try and figure out all the menu options and how they all behave. When they were working through a problem and they ran across something that they were not familiar with, our program was right there, ready to assist.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Don't see anything online. Okay, then I think maybe we'll wrap up. You can send us the slides so we can help digest, maybe brainstorm, and let us know who would be the best person to reach out to if we have additional questions.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your attention, and thank you, COMET crew, for doing an excellent job.
Thanks.
And we look forward to talking with you more.